And so I'm hoping, people are going to go, okay, let's try to figure out what it can really do for my organization here. I'm not just going to jump in and have this FOMO feeling I got to miss out and pick the first thing. So my what I'm seeing now is more and more of our clients are thinking about an AI strategy going forward.
Okay.
And in the past, I like to think I always push the idea one day every company will have an AI strategy. And people would humor me, said, oh, cloud is the thing, digital transformation is the thing. But now that doesn't seem so far-fetched.
Welcome to the AI Equation Podcast. I'm your host, Alex. Today, I'm excited for our first podcast of the year. Typically we're doing this podcast every week, but as our listeners know, we took a little bit of time off between Thanksgiving here in the US and New Year. So we're back. And my first guest is himself an AI expert. He is in the thick of it with research. Bill Wong, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Alex, and hello, everybody on the podcast. Happy New Year. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. What a great year 2023 year was as far as AI goes, right, Bill? It was just the explosion of AI. And so I want to get right into it. Tell us about because you have an amazing background as far as companies you've worked with, from Microsoft to Dell, IBM, all the great technology companies out there. And talk to us about when you got into AI.
Well, as you mentioned, I've been very fortunate and privileged to have the opportunity to work with a number of the big tech firms. So I guess I got into AI. My first firm was with IBM. I was a data specialist, worked out of development, worked on very large data warehousing systems. And even back then in the day, we started to inject AI. If people are familiar with cost-based optimizers, we try to simulate the world environment physically to optimize for queries. And then I went to Microsoft to work on their big data platforms. And all the rage at that time was big data. And what would you use these big repositories of data? More advanced analytics, better insights. And again, some firms, the leading edge firms, were getting into AI, but I would say, that was still a kind of a niche. And then I went to Oracle to work on Exadata.
Mm-hmm.
And Oracle bought an AI company while I was there. And again, growing niche. And again, basically the leaders, big tech firms, big research firms, universities were there. And then I was the AI practice lead at Dell. And again, I would say most of the clients I had, universities, research organizations, the biggest firms were focused on AI. And then as the entire world saw when ChatGPT came to be, it just exploded the interest. And so I like to say for most of my career, I've always been in data. And I would say for the majority of that time in AI, although it was more of a niche area, but now it's so pervasive, it's not funny.
Wow, what a whirlwind and what a journey! And now you're arriving where it's not a niche, a concept in any business, but the concept. There isn't a company startup or even the big brands who in every department the conversation starts and ends with how are we going to use AI to innovate and get our products across the line and make the customer relationship better, make the website SEO. I mean, it spans, and I love to see the competition, whether it's Google or Facebook, OpenAI, Anthropic, all the big companies there, and it's just been such an interesting ride. 2024. So talk to us about 2024. What are the big trends that you think we're going to see in 2024?
Well, I think one of the big trends we're going to see is that now that everybody's a little more aware and they're getting their feet wet with this technology, I think people want to be a little more thoughtful. There's still the hype.
Mhm.
There is still everybody's, I can imagine, in basket is just filled with emails saying, you must look at my product because I've got AI. And so I'm hoping, people are going to go, okay, let's try to figure out what it can really do for my organization here. I'm not just going to jump in and have this FOMO feeling I got to miss out and pick the first thing. So my what I'm seeing now is more and more of our clients are thinking about an AI strategy going forward.
Okay.
And in the past, I like to think I was one. I always push the idea one day every company will have an AI strategy, and people would humor me, said, "Oh, cloud is the thing, digital transformation is the thing." But now that doesn't seem so far fetched. And what we're seeing is some firms they're looking at and going, "Well, maybe we'll just upgrade our IT strategy and keep it up with AI." And some firms are thinking, well, yes, it's important. We're going to update our corporate, our institutional strategy and include AI. But what we're seeing is that's happening, but the firms that want to maximize the use out of AI are going to develop an AI strategy unto itself. And combined and aligned with their business strategy, that will drive the IT strategy.
Yeah, and I think it's all about timing, right? I think about the even products, hardware that have come out over the last few decades that the timing wasn't right. Like probably the biggest one I can think of is Google Glasses, right? I remember going to a conference this might have been 7, 8 years ago, and this guy was using. He's like, "That's the next big thing," and it was like, "No, it's not the next big
It
thing."
didn't happen.
You see Magic Leap, they're still trying to take off with their, AR and VR. And so I think it's all about timing. And the timing right now is right coming out of COVID, I think, because there is a feeling that this technology helps democratize the economy, where you don't have to be the largest player to take advantage of, even if it's just one little sliver like productivity, just for productivity purposes, maybe not for analyzing data and cloud and all of that. So I, for one, am excited. I talk about it here in the podcast, Bill, with our guests, the ones who are new to AI, the ones who don't want to hear about AI, they're tired of it.
Yeah.
And I love that you're talking about AI strategy as a part of the overall company and corporate strategy. Talk to us about, in your experience over the last year, what's the what's the most challenging thing for companies to do in order to, when they're implementing AI? What's like the hardest thing? Is it buy-in from the CFO, CEO? Is it they don't have the infrastructure? What, or maybe the expertise isn't there with their current providers? What is the big challenge?
A great question, Alex. I think you touched about on a number of those challenges. If I was to think of some of the standouts, certainly it is getting the all the people in the C-suite to nod their heads, and I think it's getting easier because it gets the attention of the CEO. One thing that we saw really different in my, at least in my career, I've never had until last year the odd CEO in the audience. And I would go to the CEO and I said, thanks very much for being here, but why are you here? Like CEOs typically never go to tech talks.
Yeah.
And a couple things come up. One said, I want to know if this is all hype or this is real. Is this going to just disappear like Bitcoin? Uh,
Right.
right. And another one said, I believe in this potential, but I want to understand how I can do this as fast and as safely as possible.
Mm, mm.
So the thoughtful ones understand there is opportunity there, but they know that there are risks going into this, that this isn't just something that you can buy and out of the box just accrue all these benefits.
And is there fear? I feel like over the past year, what I've heard a lot of, and maybe you can confirm or deny this in broad terms, is there fear from the C-suite that, look, what has happened to large companies, even like the big bad player Google in the space, that's been disrupted, and they're, of course, they're catching up. They have the technology. They were there at the beginning, but that Microsoft has made these partnerships with OpenAI, and it's this race. And I feel like when I talk to a lot of these, especially startups that are using AI daily, it's this fear that my competitor can do to me what OpenAI is doing to Google, and of course they have different products, but just in general terms, I mean, for myself, Bill, and I talk about this with some of our listeners here when we do some like fireside chats, is on a daily basis, just not even in my personal life, I mostly am not using Google or search anymore. I'm mostly using ChatGPT or one of the other apps that I have, or even the bots that I've created within there. So, do you feel like there's a little bit of that too, like the fear that my competitor might come and eat my lunch, so I better do this?
I think so, Alex, because one thing that we've also noticed is when I was a practice lead for I could count on one hand how many times I spoke to an insurance firm. Now, they're in financial services, and financial services have typically led the industry with AI adoption, but insurance is a little different. And some would say they're almost laggards. There are areas that they use it in for pricing of policies, for helping estimate damages, etc. But overall, as an industry, it wasn't that widespread adoption. Now, I've seen a lot of people, some of my colleagues say that they're almost leading in terms of pursuing this. Maybe it's this pent up demand and finally saying, hey, this is something that we don't, let's say, necessarily need the data scientists, that the barrier entry has been lowered. And they do feel, and they have felt too, that what if a company came and disrupted us like Google and just said, hey, everything's digitized. Why don't we enter the insurance business? So
Right.
they were always cognizant of that. But now it's so much easier. You don't have to be a large firm to help uh, companies enter and disrupt traditional businesses.
And what do you, for you personally, in your personal life, what excites you the most about AI? Is there something that you're doing daily that you feel like, okay, that's been a game changer for my productivity?
Well, I certainly use AI in my daily work. So I do research. And one of the first pieces of research I did was to create an AI maturity curve. Now, there's lots of AI maturity curves out there. And I thought, well, I got to do something different. And what I use ChatGPT for, or Bard, was to kind of assess, when I ask the question, I like to see the responses on how well it can respond in terms of creativity. And I think that's still a challenge for some of these large language models. So I basically look at the responses, and they usually give you the best statistically normal,
Mhm.
safe response, which is good. But I'm looking for things that are creative, things that people haven't thought of, things that are to come. So it's good to test my theories, my hypotheses, and say, oh, okay, this has been thought of before. I'm going to move on here. So I use it to test my hypothesis on an ongoing basis. So I find it's very useful there.
Fantastic. Now, in terms of Infotech Research Group, tell us about what are some of the big things that you guys are doing in terms of AI. I know it's a part of everything that you all do, but what are the major solutions, products that you guys are offering? And by the way, for those who don't know Infotech, when you go to the website, you guys are doing a phenomenal job with all the resources. It's there's a lot of content on the web, but I think whoever is managing your content, they're doing a phenomenal job. I love the graphs. They're super beautiful infographics that get you to connect the pieces. So tell us about what you're doing there, Bill.
Well, thanks for the feedback. I'll pass that to the team, Alex. So a couple of things. I've had also the opportunity to help guide what our AI strategy at Infotech is.
Okay.
And when we did a self-analysis, we thought, well, what are the things that we want to use AI for? And one of them was the customer experience. We want our clients to come in and have an immersive, engaging, conversational experience with us. And that can only be possible with AI. So later this quarter, you'll see when you enter the website, and it's available to people like me internally right now, but in a more engaging website, and it's going to understand and remember what you do. So it'll be more personalized with you over time. So we're excited to roll that out. And again, that's in the very near future. Other things, of course, productivity internally. One of them, like many IT shops, is looking at tools like GitHub Copilot or Vertex or Code Whisper, but code generators. So it's
Okay.
a well well understood value prop, lots of cases there. So that's something that we're seeing. Now, I will say that not everything we've seen out there is, we've kind of encountered hype as well. So in marketing, our marketing folks want to be able to take clients and move them to the next level in the buy cycle. And what we have found, at least so far, and we've tested a number, I'm not going to call out which engines, but they're they're still lacking in creativity. I mean, they're great for creating great graphics, but when
Hmm.
it comes to text and making compelling, the humans beat the large language models still in our assessment,
Hmm.
and we're using it more for lower level automation type of activities. So it's really interesting. And here's one kind of funny story. In HR, we have found, and I'm sure other companies have found this, uh, impressive resumes that have come across. And then we have found that the employee really didn't match what they said they did on paper. And when we gave them some tests, like, can you, and it was kind of a take home test, what would you recommend to, let's say, improve on this marketing copy?
Hmm.
And they did great jobs. And later we found that they use things like GPT-4 to answer it. So now what we're doing is we're giving tests and we're giving them the GPT response. So we're going to say, okay, can you improve on this? And so
Mm.
we want to get
Interesting.
what the human will do. So I'm sure other companies have faced this as well.
Yes.
Um, but yeah,
But but
but it's
But I think
exciting to
that's
see
an
that.
important point, though, Bill. I mean, you're taking it to the next level and saying, look, I'll acknowledge that you are all probably using ChatGPT or some other LLM to for the whole journey, create your LinkedIn profile or optimize it to create your resume, your portfolio. It's naive to think that they're not going to use it in their daily job should you hire them.
Right.
So talk to us about that then. How do you, of course not, we're not HR people here, but in general terms, it sounds like you guys are creating some guardrails and acknowledging, I know you're going to use AI, but how do you make it better? So as you know, the regulations that are not yet formed. Everyone says they're forming them, but we know they're not because here we are, 15 years later, and the government, Congress, and all the other agencies haven't gotten that right in social media. So to think that they're going to get it right in AI in the second big year is naive. So what kind of tips do you have for companies who are using AI? Now, it doesn't have to be HR. Your example was HR, but in general, what are there sets of guidelines aside from the ones you guys are creating internally that you can look to, or are you just using ChatGPT to create them as well?
Well, I guess that like many companies, we're kind of learning as we go. But here's one that I know many of our clients are facing right now, and you've probably seen this as well,
Okay.
is there's a debate out there. Some people are forecasting within 5 years, we'll need no programmers.
Mm.
But tools like ChatGPT and all these productivity tools, node code systems, we won't need a programmer now. I'll acknowledge that certainly you don't have to code, and and perhaps coding will look different. But I'm not a big fan of that idea. I mean, if anybody's worked in development, if I would challenge them to ask, when's the last time an end user came up to you and knew exactly what they wanted, knew the
Yeah.
exact requirements, could produce something and say, yeah, I think that's great code, and I know it's production worthy, and don't have to worry about anything else with this code. Perfect set of code I've given you. That just doesn't happen in the real world, and it's not going to happen even with generative, at least not
Mm.
within the next 5 years. So the real competitor and the benchmark to people is we're looking at people as they come in and we ask them, are you familiar with AI tools and how do you use it to enhance your work? Because we don't believe the competition to a human will be a large language model. It'll be other humans who know how to use these large language models to the fullest extent.
Agreed,
And
100%. Yeah, it's like who's got the better sword or weapon, right?
right, right.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you could probably write a book from the beginning to now, sort of like pre AI out in the mainstream. I'm just so excited about technology, honestly, and we're using it every day, even to create some of the things that we do for this podcast, so our audience knows. And I do try to, Bill, explain to people like I used AI for this, but not for this. And I think it's important to share with people what you're using AI for. And so, look, it's been such a great conversation with you, getting to know what you do, your background, having an expert like yourself on the podcast. I'm sure we'll have you back when we see the next big explosion, whatever that is. But what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you, Bill?
Well, Alex, you can send me an email direct, but probably LinkedIn is the easiest way. Just just do a Bill Wong and AI, and chances are, my handle is the AI guy. So
all right,
you'll find me out there.
Right on. Thank you so much for being on a podcast today, Bill.
Thanks very much, Alex. It was great fun, and I'll look forward to talking with you again in the future.